And we are live. Welcome, welcome.
It's good to see you, Ben.
Yeah, I know. I'm glad we're finally able to connect like this. I'm excited to have you on. I've been doing a little cyber stalking of your website, and I'm excited to talk to you because you're definitely a little more advanced than I am, and so this is good. I have some great questions for you. I'm going to be picking your brain, but for those who are kind of joining us and watching today, we have Kayla from Cub Bear Creative, and you're out in Kansas City. Is that correct?
A little bit. I serve the greater metro area, but I am actually located in Lawrence, Kansas. So where the University of Kansas is, it's about 45 minutes west. Okay. It's where I'm at, but I spend a lot of my time in Kansas City.
Oh, understood. Have camera will travel, right? So
exactly. We can go global if you want us to.
Yeah, exactly. I'm always willing down for that. Well, so
yep.
Yeah, I'm really excited because it really, you were brought to me because of you are a EventLive user like I am, and they suggested you're one of the folks I should reach out to. So let's get into it right away. Just tell me a little about who you are and talk about a little bit about Cub Bear Creative.
Yeah, well, kind of the backstory on Cub Bear Creative, because people always find it to be an interesting name and they wonder where it came from. But the neat thing is it actually ties in a lot to why I got started in live streaming. I was in college athletics for 5.5 years, serving as a game day producer, content creator for in-house departments, specifically at University of Kansas. And that is where kind of my passion for video started, was in live events. So we were totally separate from the television truck, and we would handle, so it would be like if you went to, I'm going to talk about the Chiefs because I'm from Kansas City, you go to the Chiefs game or the Royals and people see the big video board. We handled all that. And so I grew up doing that. Once I hit college, loved it, ended up coming back to it. And during my time as an intern with Rock Shock Video, it was kind of my first travel, if you travel with a team moment. And I was with another full-timer, and it was funny because sometimes they have these 24 to 48 hour like turnaround trips. So they're close. Okay. So it was like back when Nebraska was still in the Big 12, which those days are gone. But we went up with the men's basketball team to Nebraska. I was in the car, and then it was a 24-hour turnaround. So we came back as soon as the game was over. So we're talking like 2 a.m., edit in the car. And it was one of those things. It had been a long day. I think Kayla was getting a little grumpy in the back seat at 2 a.m. after not much sleep. And essentially got the name Cub Bear pretty quickly because people were like, you're getting a little rowdy back there, little intern, little Cub Bear. And so it's really fun because once I went full-time with my business, that tied back to my roots, which was college athletics. And really just once COVID hit and I went full-time with Cub Bear Creative because I got laid off from my full-time job that was separate from the college athletics world. It was just a really, really neat way to kind of go back to what I loved doing, which was live events. And so feel like it's kind of one of my strengths, where some of my skill set lies. And here we are today, a year later since COVID hit, when started doing my own stuff and still doing live streaming.
Yeah. I find it's times the opportunity to make a change, right? So to your example, that layoff gives you that courage to go for it, right? To go full time. It's challenging to ramp up, but it's pretty exciting. So are you a full time, or should say, do you focus on live streaming, or are you a video company who does live streaming?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would pin us as we're a videography company, video production company. I think I would like to move more towards full-time live streaming. Maybe over time, but the truth of the matter is I'm just not sure financially that it's quite there. Although I think it's definitely growing in popularity. I'm just not sure it could totally take care of the bills. And so really, I think in the present moment, if I consider what would I like Cub Bear Creative to be, I would actually rather turn it into a live streaming and commercial video business. Whereas right now it's kind of wedding videography, commercial video, and live streaming. Yeah. So, and the live streaming could play into weddings, certainly, but it would kind of eliminate the day of wedding videography that is pretty heavy for a service that we offer.
Yeah. Well, I from being in the wedding business myself for such a long time, it's it's easy to book all those weekend work, right?
Yeah.
So, but it was hard to fulfill the Monday through Friday. So, of course, everyone wanted corporate work, but it was kind of tough to, because the layup was you could probably book weddings, especially if you have a nice creative look to it. So, and you could book it a year out. You could have that on the calendar, So I find corporate stuff comes in a little bit later. So I understand the journey well, to get that. So, was there a trigger that kind of made you offer the live service as a business, or was it a necessity? I mean, was it COVID?
Yeah, it was necessity. There were kind of two things. So when I got out of the college athletics world, which I loved, but the lifestyle was just extremely taxing. Had been in it for 5.5 years. When I left to go work for a startup in Kansas City and then got laid off, there were two really big things that happened. One was I already had a wedding booked that was going to get rescheduled, pushed back by a couple months. No live streaming service at that point, but knew that it was going to turn into that, right? Because we're talking June came and it was an outdoor wedding, but still 50-person capacity. That became something very quickly on the radar. That was like, can we live stream this? What is it going to take? And then the other thing really was the church I attended. They did the same thing where obviously got to a point where they're saying, hey, we're not going to have people come in. We're just going to start live streaming. And so really at the same time, simultaneously, both of those needs became apparent, both on the wedding side and then just for my church. But I feel like it ended up flowing over to many other things and many other needs. So yes, it became a need, but I was, again, very excited about it just because I was like, okay, I think I have a pretty good idea of what I'm doing and have some, this kind of my wheelhouse per se.
Yeah, no, I mean, obviously you got, a lot of experience doing it,
Yeah.
So so how did you end up finding EventLive?
Gosh, I remember, Adam, I cannot remember his last name, but he is big on the
Leverage.
Yes, Leverage.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. He is so great and outspoken about sharing tools and tips and tricks that are working for him and even asking questions. And the first wedding I did, which would have been that June wedding outdoors, like immediately after it was done, I saw him post something. He said, hey, if anyone's needing, a hosting service for wedding live streams, EventLive's been amazing, really talked to Mark and said, customer service has been kind of the best part about it. And for so many reasons, it was really intriguing because up until that point, I was doing it through YouTube and then kind of trying to embed on my website, but there's a couple tricky things. There's a couple tricky things with YouTube for it to really be like a clean show. And a lot of that being, I think you can't actually embed the link on your website unless you have 1,000 or more subscribers. And so, I'd like just started out. I have like 2 subscribers. It's like me and my dad, it's like my dad supporting my business.
Yeah.
And so I was always bummed that, it would take you to YouTube and then you'd have that interface. And it was nice that they had some things like the chats and the comments. But when I saw EventLive, I mean, I was totally sold. The layout, the private URL link, the customer service was just so outstanding. And so once I did one event and saw how well it went, I was completely sold.
Yeah, I solely use EventLive. That's my platform for all those reasons as well. Yeah. I had found Mark through I found his actual his name was attached to I do some internet marketing, so I was able to kind of do the Google searches, found his name, found a phone number, called them up before they even had their phone number listed on the website. He and I had a chat, and next thing you know, because I was comparing it against Zoom and all these other services, and I was like, it was just awful. Everything was awful, and it's just it finally all came together. Like I need a certain amount of this, I need a certain amount of this, I need a certain amount of this, and it all worked together for me. So
absolutely,
yeah.
Good for you. Also really headhunting in the beginning, man. Who are these folks? Let me find them.
Yeah, exactly. I had to, right? I was just going for it. Well, I knew there was a need, right? I mean, this is where all my weddings had to get pushed to the following year.
Yep.
And what are you going to do now, right? It's going to, it's time that we, I need to find something new. And I had this in the back of my mind. So now I only ever do weddings. So what kind of events are you doing?
Yeah, weddings. definitely kind of were the beginning of this journey, I would say. In terms of Cub Bear Creative, you know, I did some live streaming for my church, but that was really just volunteer work. But I will say, you know, corporate and companies, they are really catching on to it. And I'm sure we'll end up talking about this, but I think even less so of like, it's not even just COVID, but they're realizing the reach, and it's something that's going to stay. And so a couple other ones I've done through Cub Bear Creative specifically, I actually did a citywide country club, basically members meeting. They have an annual member meeting.
Okay.
And they were pretty, and not even just that, but there were some folks that were going to be out of town. And so that was probably one of the biggest ones we've done. And there were a couple different pieces, right? Because they had like a slideshow they wanted to incorporate and make sure folks at home could see it. They wanted to be able to have, you know, a Q&A mic in case people that attended, you know, wanted to ask a question to the board. And that's probably the biggest one I have done outside of weddings. Also, I've done some celebration of life services. And then not through Cub Bear Creative, but through a really close colleague of mine, Logan Tritt. We actually just wrapped a couple weeks ago a really large dance showcase for a company out of Kansas City. So it was a multi-day thing. He headed it up. It was fantastic. So it has been a little bit all over the place for sure. But I think it was after that first wedding live stream. It's a very interesting scenario of what happened with it. And I remember I went in saying, if we can do this, we can do anything. Yeah. Because there were just so many weird moving pieces. And so when it was successful, I was like, all right, here to stay.
Yeah, I tell you, it was a heart attack for the first time I did one, you know, because I'm just worried about connectivity. I'm worried about audio. I'm worried about all this kind of stuff. You know, as a photographer, I literally can walk into any scenario, had that gear in my hand for so many years and just feel comfortable with it.
That's right.
But for me, at least the software piece was like, okay, I got that. Right.
Right. Yep.
Everything else was still a heart attack, but I got that part. Right. So that was interesting to kind of, you know, take that off my plate. But so are you selling different packages? Because obviously you're kind of like, how are you doing? Let's talk about your pricing, because that's one thing I'm always struggling with. Like, how do you kind of think out your pricing on stuff?
Yeah, and that is still in a lot of ways a guessing game, right? Like you're trying to estimate out hours, estimate out crew members, right? And then obviously labor, rentals, any extra equipment that's going to need to be either purchased or rented. And so I've tried to, with weddings, it's a little bit more set where right now I just have 3 different package options you can choose from. One is single cam, one is 2 cameras, and then one is 3 cameras. But once we hit those 2 and 3 camera packages, you can also add on like, hey, do you want not just your ceremony, but do you want some of your reception live streamed? And I would say that is actually the least common of all of those. Like I've really only had one client who was like, oh yeah, like we have tons of family not able to make it. So we would love to get like our first dances also included. And those packages range, I think right now, the last time I sold it, anywhere between like 1,000 to 1,400. But I will say this, Ben, is since we do wedding videography services as well, what has happened probably just as much as someone saying, hey, can you come just live stream our wedding ceremony, is couples will hire us for their day of, and then they'll say, and on top of that, can you come in and live stream our ceremony? And so whenever they do go that route, they end up getting a pretty big deal, like just because we would already be there filming their wedding ceremony anyways. And so really you're just paying for the extra labor, the extra equipment that needs to be hauled in. And so that's where I've started it. Commercial, it's quite different because it just depends on how large of a scale that the project is and how simple is it, right? You know, like celebration of life service, if they want 1 camera and 1 microphone, I mean, that's pretty simple compared to a, you know, board of directors meeting, and they want to show a slideshow and have multiple cameras and multiple audio sources. And so it changes.
Production, setup,
absolutely.
All that kind of stuff. For me, since I'm pretty much only 1 camera, I'm doing it. So I base it on labor hours. So if I'm sending a guy, right, not me, I'm sending a guy, and that guy has to drive an hour and a half away, right? So it's hour and a half out, hour and a half back, plus time there. I have a certain rate amount that I'm going to pay the guy.
Yep.
And then I go for my markup from there.
Yes.
And then if I don't get it because of it's too high, I'm okay with that because it's outside of town. If it's inside of town, it's convenient. I'll just keep it simple and based, and it's kind of a flatter rate.
Yeah.
But you know, I feel like some people, they want to give the house away when they're first starting.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes they give a little too much away when it comes to it. You got to value your time.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I think you're probably one advantage is I certainly think with weddings, I certainly think there is a time called that. Sure, let's pull in multiple camera angles and kind of do the whole shebang. But also what you've realized is if you can get someone like yourself who can get clean audio, one really good camera shot, put it on a platform that's super appealing, you know, aesthetically pleasing. I mean, it goes so far, you know, again, it's kind of goes back to the typical, like, you know, sometimes keeping it simple is better. And so, and I think that yours sounds about right. You know, it's like, we don't always.
Well, and I also put myself in a price point where I'm not, since I'm not a videographer, right? I kind of let people know that. So I'm not trying to get that 4K resolution. I'm not trying to get that cut shots. I'm not really trying to get, and they know that, right? So I'm telling you, this is what's going to be. I do, you know, in real life, IRL kind of, I'm going to follow the action and the camera's going to be in your face, whatever. I'm still able to zoom in and stay out of the way and all that kind of stuff. But here's my price point based on that.
Absolutely.
So,
yep.
So
and I found, I don't know how you feel, but one thing I definitely include in that pricing is, you know, the EventLive, the $50 pay per event. And one thing that's been fantastic, you know, is I've never had a client be like, that's outrageous. You know, people are like, oh man, for what we get, you know, the digital guest book, the custom URL link. So that's been really fantastic for clients.
Well, I do mine as white labeled. So essentially the client doesn't really know that EventLive is the major piece of my software.
Sure.
And it's branded with my name on and everything else. I follow it up. So the price is baked into it.
Sure. Yeah.
They don't need to know. They don't need to know how much it costs me per event.
That's true.
You know?
That's true. Yeah.
If anyone's watching too and curious about the EventLive, current pricings right now are $50 an event, or you can get a package of 10 for $35. Right. So
it's great.
It's a win-win. I mean, you just buy it when you need it, right? Support's there, everything else, and it's really simple. So you know, if you're also interested, we have other tutorials that are going to come up on the channel here that are going to show you how to use and how simple this stuff is, and take it from us that we really love it and why.
Yeah. Cannot speak highly enough about it. That's for sure.
Yeah. So when people are kind of inquiring, what are you asking them? Let's just say it's a wedding, right?
Sure.
What kind of information are you gathering to set up for an event?
Yeah, obviously, just like any project, right? It's, you know, what is the most important thing that's happening at your event, right? Like, is it most important just that people at home can see that the event's happening, right? Or do you really want to take it to the next level when we're talking weddings? You know, do you want to be able to see the groom's face when, you know, bride is walking down the aisle or whatever it is, you know, whatever. And so what I've found is, again, most folks, since we are a wedding videography service company, like full service company, since they are going to be getting most of those camera angles, all of those camera angles later in their package, I have found that most folks, what they really care about is they just want one really good, clean angle, and then and then good audio, right? Which everyone knows, people would take bad video over bad audio any day, right? And so
absolutely.
And so for me, that's always my big sell, is making sure they understand, like, hey, do you have a DJ, right? You know, because as crazy as it is, last August, and it was in this beautiful church, but you know, it's just like organ, piano, weren't bringing in any type of DJ, and really they don't even use microphones. And so that's when, you know, I'm looking at my arsenal of equipment, and I'm like, all right, well, now we're going to have to start buying some wireless systems, you know, like they have to, you know, because they not only are they not bringing in a DJ, but like the church itself doesn't even have anything, you know? And so it's usually questions like that, just trying to get a feel for, what is of utmost importance. And then every now and then I feel like I get a client who they want to go all out, right? Like there are multiple camera angles. We want to be able to see all the angles. I want you know, I got 200 family members at home that can't come anymore.
Yeah.
We want to give them as much of a, you were right here in this moment with us as possible.
That's just good business practice anyways, having the three packages, right?
Yeah.
The small, the medium, the large,
Right.
The medium one is really the one you want to sell, right?
That's right.
But the large one is, hey, if they take the bait and they want to have the whole night, we're going to sell it to you, right? But
that's right.
And then people feel responsible. Like, I don't want to pay for that big one.
Yep.
But I'll feel responsible if I get the middle one, which is the one we wanted to sell you to begin with.
That's right. The most popular one.
Yeah, exactly. The most popular. So
that's right.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
You know, so obviously with all that kind of stuff, let's get into gear, because this is where my curiosity comes in, because I'm still the newbie, and I'm trying to improve my game, right? I'm trying to. So what kind of gear did you start with, like the live streaming when you know?
Yeah. From a streaming standpoint, use OBS. Love that it's free. I mean, that is like the gift to every live streamer, every videographer. I feel like during COVID that was free. So use that as the streaming platform. And then big thing was working on Sony cameras. So trying to incorporate as many of those as needed, up to 3 cameras. And the first wedding we did, like I said, last June, I mean, it was crazy. Kind of the background story on it is, the couple's wedding obviously got pushed back, and then the venue space, you know, they're like, hey, we can't book anything for it until, you know, restrictions are lightened.
Yeah.
And so what actually ended up happening is they found this other venue that hadn't even broken ground yet. And they were planning on opening in August, but the venue owners just really had a heart for all the couples who, you know, their wedding and plans are being changed. And so they started offering free wedding ceremonies. And it's out in a vineyard in the middle of nowhere, probably 10 minutes outside MCI Airport, which, you know, if you've ever been to Kansas City, what you realize, really Missouri, you realize that the airport is just like super far from everything. So you're in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
But they had a little vineyard, you know, a little just walkway and some chairs. And so when we did that one, that was the crazy one, because we're talking no internet. There's no power. Yeah. So like, how are we powering up all of our equipment? And it's also, mind you, it's June in Kansas. Yeah. So like heat, what are you going to do about heat?
Yeah.
And that was really the first time I think that we started bringing in the equipment, like the Rode Wireless Go's that you have, brought in the Zoom H6s, you know, for recording. And then a big thing, I felt like a big thing, since they didn't have a DJ there, was we were trying really hard to figure out how to split audio sources multiple ways, right? So like we have one source going into the computer, but then we want to make sure we have like a backup record. And so that was probably when I feel like I acquired most of my audio equipment, which Rode Wireless Go, Sony cameras, tons of cable, right? Like you're talking about how many cable runs you need.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. Were you going the wireless or your
you know, wireless? I should have done it. I should have gone wireless. That would have been the way to go. I know that they were real hot commodities when this all started. So no, we ran, we just ran the micro HDMI out of the Sonys. And so it was one of those things that, for most HDMI cables, you know, they lose signal after about 50 feet unless you start using boosters. And so we were really trying to avoid that if possible. So it just took being strategic and how we were going to set it up. And then,
I mean, these were micro weddings too, probably, right? So you didn't have to worry about being, you know, 15 rows back behind a bunch of guests to set up and stuff.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And then the crazy part of that, and I've not had to, thank God, I've not had to repeat this, although it was really cool we did it. I'm glad we didn't have to repeat this. But in order to run power, to make sure, you know, laptop doesn't die, anything else, we ran like 200 to 300 foot extension cords from my car that was in the parking lot.
What?
All the way there, and like did some test runs to make sure, you know, it didn't like shut the car down, you know, anything. And sure enough,
did you have like the converter in your car that allows the?
Yeah, just like the little, like you plug it into the, you know, where the lighter goes, and then you just plug in your 3-prong, you know, how like, I mean, it was wild. And so in middle of nowhere. So also like
probably trying to listen for your car like every couple minutes. Like
yep. And it was a little bit of a newer car, so thankfully it was a bit quieter. But you know, we had to go out there multiple times for internet testing. And so obviously
Yeah.
the hotspot is a huge part of kind of that equipment list. So I feel like I kind of went on a couple tangents, but
yeah. So let's go back. So what are you running off of? What kind of laptop you running off of?
MacBook Pro 2015, but I will say as much as possible, trying to switch over to only using the iMac just for CPU load. So it's a little bit of a beast moving around, but if it's more than one camera at this point, the iMac comes.
I'm a huge iMac fan.
Yeah.
And, you know, I have actually even in this office a couple 27 inches.
Yeah.
But I actually have a carrying case. I have a laptop version of carrying case. When I was still had my photography studio downtown, I would just take my Mac with me as if it was a giant laptop. So that was very helpful.
Yeah. The MacBook Pro has done pretty well. Like I said, it's mostly been, I mean, it's just gotten to the point where it really needs to be a pretty basic live stream. Otherwise the CPU load on it just really goes up.
Really?
And so it's been fine, but that's kind of my new rule of thumb is more than one camera, we're bringing the iMac.
Now, are you bringing in any kind of switchers at all?
We are. I got my switcher next to me, actually. If you can see it.
We'll show and tell. I like it.
Yeah, right. So this is actually my colleagues. We share it. This is the Roland.
Roland, okay.
Yep.
Do you know which version of Roland it is?
Oh, goodness. V1 HD. That's probably not the actual model. That's probably not the actual. Yeah, that is the model. Yeah. V1 HD.
V1 HD. Okay.
And
what do you like about this piece?
So it has 4 HDMI ins. So up to 4 camera angles and or really 4 HDMI sources, right? So one of those, for example, could be like a computer, like they want to do a slideshow. And the best part about this, I think that has taken the live stream to the next level is you can do PNP, picture in picture. And so again, in moments where like for the board of directors meeting, they want to be able to see the person presenting, but they also want to be able to see the slideshow. So we can build that PNP within the switcher. And the reason this is so great is it kind of goes back to what I was just saying about the load. It takes all the load off the computer because all of the work is being done here. When I first started doing live streaming, you know, we would buy multiple magwells and then we'd be using them in all the USB ports. But again, that's just more work and more processing the computer's having to do. So this guy's been great. It gives you, you know, 2 outputs. It gives you your preview and then gives you another output so that you can have a monitor that you're, you know, just using to make sure all your camera angles are how you want them to look. It looks, I mean, it's a very mini version of a control room. And so this has kind of been the guy that has really taken, I feel like, our live streaming to the next level.
Nice.
Yeah, it's been great.
Any kind of internal memory on that thing at all, or powering? And is there anything it requires specially?
You know, I do think that there is a little bit of memory. Like I said, the guy that I do most of my live streaming with, this is actually his, and we kind of have shared equipment, try to be smart in that. So I'm not sure he's used it, but I've loved that thing, and I feel like it's been pretty powerful, especially for the PNP.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the Sony cameras. Which Sony cameras are you using, and why?
Sure. Well, I just bought the Sony a7S III for a lot of reasons.
Ooh, all right.
I know. I was gonna wait, but especially
someone got a new toy.
I did get a new. I know. I should have pulled that. It's right down there. I probably should pull it out of my bag. Right. But you know, the reason I did was actually mainly for live streaming, because the Sony a7 IIIs, some of the things it's missing is, you know, there's no full HDMI out, and not that that's the end of the world, but you're talking another adapter, another cable to get to HDMI inputs, full HDMI inputs. You know, the screen didn't pop out all the way, which just made it really hard. It kind of just has that like accordion type fold. And then really the big thing is the Sony a7 IIIs just are notorious for overheating. And so any type of outdoor, I mean, and that goes not just for live streaming. I mean, that goes for anything outdoors. And the Sony a7S III had raving reviews, you know, that it could deal with the heat. It has that full HDMI out. You can also, this is kind of a funny one that you didn't realize it until it was happening in the moment. And you're like, crap. That would have been really helpful to know ahead of time. But on the A7 IIIs, let's say I wanted to shoot the ceremony and record at 4K, but I only want to send 1080 to the stream.
Sure.
Well, if I do that and I hit the record button, I actually lose my monitor on the Sony a7 III.
Really?
So yeah. So unless I get an external monitor, you're,
Yeah.
blindly going and trying to figure it out. So you have to bump it down to 1080, but that's not the case with the Sony a7S III. So I kind of feel like they must have got together with a bunch of, live streaming people and was like, hey, what are all the things that we need to change? And it's been great, but that's kind of my go-to camera kit for the day is 2 of the a7 IIIs, and then the main one is the a7S III.
Okay. Now we talked a little bit about audio. We had the Rhodes mics. Are you anything else you're using that you kind of go to?
We use some of the Sennheiser wirelesses. It always depends on the event itself. So for example, if there's a DJ coming, I mean, that helps us out so much.
Big time. Yeah.
So much, right? Like you're like, okay, let me just plug in my recorder or run the line into my Zoom H6, and then we can go from there. But if it's a standalone, I'll use the Rode Wireless Go, some of the Sennheisers, and then if it's a more corporate event, usually they want to use handheld mics, and so I just have a really basic Shure wireless system. It comes with one lapel mic and then one handheld.
Gotcha.
Which is great. So if you want to use it for a wedding, you can hand over the lapel to the officiant, and then the mic can kind of be a roaming handheld microphone.
That's nice.
Yeah. Those are kind of my audio. Yeah, those are my audio toys, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, that's big. I'm even still struggling with the Rhodes because of line of sight. So we run into still some line of sight issues that happen every once in a while. But if you can plug in, obviously, to the DJ, and then you just know, right, I'm there. Because really what it is, line of sight for me is someone's turning, right? They got it on their lapel or whatever, and they just turn around on me, and I'm starting to hear that drop out. But the Rhodes Wireless 2s, though, have that onboard recording. So we're able to come back real quick and, download it and be done with it. It's great.
Yeah. I heard you on one of these last streams talking about that. And I actually don't have the Rode Wireless 2s, but they sound fantastic.
So good.
All right.
First off, connectivity is a little bit better. Range is a little bit better. But, it's a 2 transmitter, 1 receiver. And you can do all your changes on the receiver. You can even mute either one out, and they both do on recording. So, but I bring them in, since I'm going in through a phone, I bring them in as kind of as a one stream. So you can split them out if you wanted to, but
so are you charging your phone? Cause you're probably using that dongle adapter into the phone, I would assume. Are you also charging at the same time?
Yeah. I don't have to if it's under, say, an hour and a half or maybe 2 hours, but I have a splitter where the splitter has a top and bottom. So the bottom I can do audio, and the other one I can do charge.
Okay.
So
that's good stuff.
And now you're talking about heat, right? So I am. You probably left your phone in the sun every once in a while, right? Sitting outside, and all of a sudden your phone goes emergency, right? Overheat. You're like, oh, shit. So in this case, I actually I will have I have a little shade that'll go over top of the phone, right? So just a tiny bit. First off, for visibility, that helps, outside. And then, but the charging obviously heats it up as well. So those two things you try. Yeah. So you get a little bit of you have to kind of be a little conscious about what,
any disaster stories yet with that?
No, I've been really fortunate so far. Yeah. Cause I've actually streamed up to 5 hours using my phone, only my phone. And in that case though, I've gone, it's powering a microphone too. So, versus trying to put a battery powered microphone on and worried about that going out, or using the wireless mics to power it, so I'm trying to get something to take one step out of the process,
that's right,
of freaking out. But
which are you shooting photos when you're doing that too?
No, this is completely separate. Completely separate. So I can't do both. That's
gonna say, man.
Yeah, I got guys. So
that's right.
Yeah. So what else you got for equipment wise? What would you suggest? I mean, like little things like gaffer's tape, tables. Like what's your setup like?
Absolutely. Definitely bought a little table, just your typical foldable rectangle table, which has come into, it's just been more handy than you would think. The hotspot is a huge one.
That's where that.
when I just did this celebration of life service last week, I mean, it was pretty wild, but the first thing I do with clients, other than ask about the, the priority of like what they want, is I'll say, I can't book you until I get out to the site that you're wanting to do this at. And it doesn't mean we can't live stream. It doesn't mean that there aren't options, but we need to see what the internet connectivity is and actually run some speed tests so that you are aware of, what we're dealing with. And it was one of those things where we almost didn't bring the hotspot this past weekend because the venue we were at was Google Fiber. The upload speed was like insane. I mean, it was almost a gig. I've never seen anything like it connected to Ethernet. But for whatever reason, it was tripping in and out. And we actually decided last minute to go to the hotspot because it was more reliable. It wasn't cutting in and out. And so, I started with a smaller Verizon hotspot and then ended up upgrading, which it's just a little bit more powerful. I think the devices it holds just a little bit better. And that has kind of been the new conversation of, we're never going to a site without this moving forward. So gaffer's tape, the hotspot, camera lenses, especially for live streaming using the 70 to 200, big deal. So in case we're far away, we usually always take some extra monitor sources if it's a bigger stream. So I guess what I mean by that is ideal in a perfect world, we want to be able to have, whether it's a laptop or just an external monitor that is outputted from the switcher. We want someone watching that so that we can make sure is audio, video synced. Does everything look good? Do colors look good? And then for indoor, obviously lights are a big one. And I just have some really basic GVM ones. And if they need more, we'll rent them out. And so I think those are the main ones other than the computers. So
that's a good, good bag of, it's a lot of stuff to bring with you,
Yeah, it's a lot. You get your workout in. No need to go to the gym that day for sure.
I always say just even like pre-charging everything, batteries, all that kind of stuff, like all that, the checklist. It does help as in any professional like this, photography or, videography or live streaming. You should definitely have your checklist and go down through that checklist to make sure everything's in there. The backups of, simple connectivity things, even just talking about like the donagles, the connectors, those extra wires that for some reason, someday that connectivity is just not working, and you just need to be able to pull a plug and stick another one in just to, you could have a pin bent somewhere or something, all that stuff that kind of really,
and I feel like
can blow your day.
Yeah. And just trying to even like tighten up just how we're transferring equipment. Right. So like, it seems so silly, but it's like, I bought a cable bag finally. Right. So it's like my HDMI, my XLRs, they're all in there for exactly the reason you said, because they're kind of just scattered. And I feel like for me, probably the time that they're going to bend the most is when we're transporting, we're going point A to point B really quickly. And so I have a cable bag and also just trying to get like some of our bigger Ethernet cables on just like little wheels so that we can keep it clean when we're running lines, throughout the venue or the job site. And so the little things have really seemed to make a difference, no doubt.
Yeah. But it's good to, it's good to know you're kind of doing the same thing I'm doing is to kind of keep, so let's kind of think about, do you think live stream is here to stay? Like what's your opinion on that kind of stuff?
I do. I'm interested to see if it'll stay for weddings. I think it is definitely here for the corporate world. I think there's a lot of positive with weddings, but obviously I do think most people are like, hey, I would rather have you be there in person. Whereas I feel like for corporate events, and again, the board of directors was a really great example where the reason we were live streaming was because of capacity limits. Yeah. But what they realized towards the end of it is there were at least a handful of people that were out of town. And they were like, well, I'm actually free at this time, but I'm out of town, so I can't come. Yeah. And I think that they found, oh man, this is actually just a huge benefit that we can send this out to members that aren't able to attend. I also think things like celebration of life services, just because usually those are, obviously you want to try to get folks there as much as you can, but just knowing like it's probably going to be a fast turnaround so you can send out a link. So I certainly think I'll be interested with weddings, although I don't think it's leaving anytime soon. I'll be interested to see in the super long term if it stays, but no doubt I think people are realizing that live streaming is incredibly powerful if you know how to do it the right way.
I think a lot of the international weddings, like international families, we'll call it that, right? So I've already had, families that were in Australia, India, Malaysia, Philippines, and Argentina. So those have all been families who couldn't attend, and that's their specific reason for this, right? They wanted to have all these folks there. So it became a integral part for them. So I think that part will stay. It's the small town home family that may not feel like they need that,
right?
So but they're also the ones who we call it the shoot and burn, right? They want all I want is someone to just record the ceremony for me. Right? You don't need to edit. You don't need to do anything else. Well, that's technically what I'm doing, right? So, I can get you a shot of the bride coming down the aisle, which is what we want, right? Dad walking down the aisle. We turn around, we capture the vows, and those are the two biggest pieces. And you cover that. That's it's the price point, right? So the price point, if I keep it into it, it's a nice add-on, but not a bank breaker. I think that'll be helpful.
Well, and it's always interesting depending on what the client or the couple wants. But one thing, and you kind of just said it, if you're cutting camera angles and you're doing it live, especially as EventLive is moving towards having HD streaming, full HD streaming,
I know that
my post is now done. Right? Like ideally, like my post-production, I have just saved time because I just cut my show live. And so that's, I think, going to be a game changer moving forward, no doubt. Yeah.
I think a lot of the things that they're really doing is helping with events and everything else. EventLive is really coming up, they're kind of stepping up the game to be able to kind of be more applicable for a lot of stuff. So what would you say to anybody who's trying to get into the game, right? Would you encourage them? Where would you say to start, how to get educated?
Yeah, man, I think it's worth starting. Kind of like we talked about a little bit ago, I think keeping it simple in the beginning, right? And because I think if you do it effectively with not very much, it's actually going to go a long ways. And so I think that just like even you were saying, I think you can spend less than $1,000 easily and really put out a good quality stream. I do find that, I was fortunate enough growing up in the live event world and having a lot of, live event engineers that either if I didn't know the answer to the question, I usually had a resource. And so I do think getting yourself in a community where people can answer that is going to be huge, whether it's on Facebook or, YouTube, obviously just will offer endless just tutorials on how you do that. I can think about a handful of people that I watched when I just was getting started. And so, I'd say don't be scared. Like you said, this thing is so powerful and you can stream and you can run good audio into it. And people are going to be thrilled. Like you said, EventLive has made it so easy. Really, they're teeing us up. And so I'd say, don't be scared. And I've always found, if you're just honest in the beginning, your client's not going to be upset, so you go to a couple, whether it's a friend of yours and you say, hey, I don't necessarily know what I'm doing, but would you be my guinea pig? And, I'll give you a heck of a deal or for free. And that way, there's no big obligation or contract. And then just see how it goes, because I feel like that's how most work is, right? Like you get people to trust you, to give you a chance, and then you get better at it and you keep going. And so, I think I'd say do it. No doubt.
I tried to get my first one for free. Unfortunately, the mother of the bride didn't tell me that she changed the ceremony time. They're like, oh, since it was only a handful of people, oh, we're all ready. Let's just do the ceremony an hour early. So I missed that one, right? So the next one I charged $200, and I went out and I did it for $200, and I was like, oh, I can figure this out, right? And then of course I was able to raise my prices and kind of put it all together. But same thing, it really boiled down to it. I think there's, you gotta, and then what's nice about EventLive is it takes one of those pieces out, right? You got to worry about software, the gear, gear being including audio, right? Audio and camera, and then connectivity, right? So that's really it. If you can say software, take that off the plate, got that already, right? You got to talk about your audio, just figure out what solution works best for you. And then connectivity. And when I say connectivity, what are you going to connect? You're going to connect your camera or is it a cell phone or whatever. Those are the three pieces.
That's right.
If you can take one. Now you got to figure out 2 more pieces. That's it, right?
Yep.
And how that one works for you.
And the benefit with the phone is, again, unless you're in the middle of nowhere, I mean, you can use your data if you want, you know, and that's the really nice thing that obviously a computer can't offer you is, you know, you're going to have to be on some type of Wi-Fi, you know, or hardwired cable. So yeah, no doubt.
So, well, good. Well, thanks for doing this. You know, this is pretty awesome. You know, once I started checking out the website and stuff like that, I was really interested in getting a chance to meet with you. And I think I've certainly learned a couple of things already today about, you know, the switcher and some other stuff. So I'm really happy about that. But I do want to plug anyone who's watching this.
That's right.
We got to check out your site here.
Oh,
right?
man,
so,
there it is.
Yeah. So this is your live stream page, right? So
it is.
Which you get plenty of information, obviously, you know, talk about, you know, the work you've done in Kansas City. There's a great shot of you COVID time, right?
Yeah, right.
Stuff like that. But, you know, you are obviously an artist. So I've seen a lot of cool stuff on here.
Appreciate
you know,
that.
the weddings and, you know, the live streaming commercial videos and things like that. But it's just cubbearcreative.com.
That's right.
It's real simple. So if anyone wants to find out anything more about her or services, certainly could reach out to her. You know, social media as well, you know, get engaged in these kind of things. And,
that's right.
You know, I'm sure you'd probably be willing to answer some questions like I have to some folks that are, you know, getting interested and getting creative with, you know, trying to get this business off the ground. So,
well, Ben, I'll tell you this much. I'm very impressed by what you're doing because I take photos, but I tell people all the time, I'm like, it's not the niche. So just be aware of that. So the fact that you're a photographer and you have kind of nailed down how to do some live streaming, I'm impressed to say the least.
Thank you. Well, there was a lot of YouTube videos, right? So a lot of these videos, anybody's watching this, you know, you're just going to learn bit by bit. So
that's right. Thanks, Ben. It's been awesome being here.
Thanks for joining me. Everybody, thanks. Well, check out the channel. We obviously have more videos dropping. And for those, you know, there are going to be some specific to certain niches and equipment we're using, but there's going to be more videos like that. So hope you'll find us again. Thanks.